Right now, if you walk down Winchester Avenue in New Haven, Connecticut, you'll see luxury apartments renting for $3,975 a month. There's a coffee shop called Fussy Coffee, where a tuna sashimi poke bowl costs $14. Young professionals in Patagonia jackets sipping oat milk lattes. Biotech startups occupying converted factory buildings with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything is clean. Everything is modern. Everything is expensive. 70 years ago, this exact spot, right where that coffee shop sits, employed 19,000 people building M1 Garand rifles for World War II. The factory ran 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The noise was deafening. The power plant was the largest in Connecticut. You could hear the machines from a mile away. The smell of machine oil and hot metal hung in the air. 1 out of every 10 people in New Haven worked here. 1 out of 10. March 31st, 2006. The last 186 workers clock out for the final time. 140 years of Winchester production in New Haven ends. The company that made the gun that won the West, that armed American soldiers in 2 world wars, that employed generations of families, that defined this city for over a century, just vanishes. The machines stop, the workers leave, the buildings sit empty. How does that happen? How does a company go from 19,000 workers to 186? From an American icon recognized worldwide to foreign ownership to complete closure? From building the rifles that won the West and defended democracy to making nothing at all? The answer starts with a kid born into poverty who couldn't afford school, involves a shirt manufacturer who'd never designed a gun in his life but saw opportunity where everyone else saw failure. Includes a catastrophic quality decision in 1964 that gun collectors still discuss today with genuine disgust, and ends with luxury apartments built on toxic soil where rifles used to be made, where workers' grandchildren can't afford to live. This is the story of ambition that knew no limits, craftsmanship that defined an industry, corporate stupidity that destroyed a century of reputation, and what happens when you prioritize this quarter's profits over next century's legacy. It's about 140 years of American manufacturing history compressed into the rise and fall of a single factory. And it's about what we lose when we let places like this die. Before we dive into this incredible rise and fall, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by stories of American industry, stories about what we've built and what we've lost, subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the places that made America. Now let's go back to where it all began, back to a winter day in 1810, when a baby was born who would build an empire. November 30th, 1810. Boston, Massachusetts, Oliver Fisher. Winchester enters the world with absolutely nothing. His parents, Samuel and Hannah Winchester, are farmers, not prosperous farmers. Not landowners with acreage and prospects, penniless farmers scratching out survival in hardscrabble Massachusetts soil. 1 year later, Samuel Winchester dies. Oliver's widowed mother Hannah is left alone with 5 children to feed. No inheritance, no life insurance, no safety net. Just 5 mouths and a farm that barely fed the family when there were 2 adults working it. Oliver goes to work at age 6 years old. While other kids are learning to read, Oliver Winchester is hauling water, feeding animals, pulling weeds, doing whatever a 6-year-old can do to contribute to family survival. This isn't character-building summer farm work. This is necessity. This is survival. He gets almost no formal education. His family can't afford to send him to school. Can't afford the time away from work. Can't afford the expense. Can't afford the luxury of education when there's food to grow and firewood to chop. Oliver Winchester grows up essentially illiterate in a world that's rapidly industrializing, where education increasingly matters, where the gap between educated and uneducated is becoming a chasm. But here's the thing about Oliver Winchester. Poverty doesn't break him. It forges him. He's watching other people succeed, watching merchants, watching businessmen, watching educated men build wealth while his family struggles, and he's learning something that will define his entire life. Nobody's coming to save you. If you want something, you build it yourself. At age 14, Oliver is apprenticed to a carpenter and church builder. It's skilled work, honest work. He's learning measurements, joinery, how to read plans, how to turn raw lumber into structures that will stand for decades. He's good at it, really good. His hands learn what his mind couldn't study in books. By age 20, Oliver Winchester is running his own building contracting business. He's 20 years old, functionally uneducated, and he's his own boss, hiring workers, bidding on jobs. Building a reputation for quality work delivered on time. Not bad for a kid who started working at 6 because his father died and left his mother with 5 kids and nothing. The 1830s arrive. Winchester is in his 20s now, ambitious, restless. He moves to Baltimore and opens a men's furnishing store, shirts, collars, accessories. It's a step up from carpentry. Retail has higher margins than construction, less backbreaking, more respectable. He's learning business, learning customers, learning that presentation matters, that quality matters, that reputation matters. The store does well. Well enough that on February 20th, 1834, Oliver Winchester marries Jane Ellen Hope. They're both starting from modest circumstances, building something together. Over the next years, they have 3 children: Anne Rebecca, born 1835; William Wirt, born 1837; Hannah Jane, the youngest. Winchester is a good father, a devoted husband, but he's also consumed by business. One newspaper will later write about him: "The busy mind of Mr. Winchester was never at rest." That's not a compliment about hobbies. That's a description of a man who can't stop seeing opportunities, can't stop calculating margins, can't stop thinking about how to build something bigger. Running the furnishing store, Winchester notices something. He's selling shirts made by other people. They set the wholesale price. He sets the retail price. But the real money, the real profit, that's going to whoever's making the shirts. The manufacturer sets the wholesale price high enough to make serious money, and Winchester, the retailer, is just scraping by on the margin between wholesale and retail. He's watched enough business to understand the equation. If you want real wealth, you don't sell someone else's product. You make the product yourself. You control the costs. You control the quality. You control the profit. By the mid-1840s, Winchester has saved money. He's studying the Industrial Revolution that's transforming America. Factories are sprouting up across New England. Water power, then steam power, driving machines that can produce goods at scales unimaginable a generation earlier. Mass production is creating fortunes, and Winchester, who never had formal education, who started working at 6, who built himself from farm labor to carpentry to retail, sees an opportunity that most educated businessmen miss. He's going to manufacture shirts, not retail them, make them. 1848. Winchester is 38 years old. He moves his family to New Haven, Connecticut, and opens a shirt manufacturing factory with a partner named John M. Davies. Not a small operation, not a workshop, a real factory, with machines, workers, production lines, quality control. They call it the New Haven Shirt Manufacturing Company. Winchester brings his carpenter's precision to manufacturing. He understands how things are built, how they fit together, how quality is maintained across repeated production. He applies those principles to shirt making. The factory starts small, maybe a dozen workers, a few sewing machines, learning the process, refining the techniques. Winchester is obsessive about quality. Every shirt has to meet his standards. Every collar has to fit properly. Every seam has to be straight. He's building a reputation, and reputation is everything. Then Winchester does something smart. He doesn't just manufacture generic shirts. He innovates. He patents a men's dress collar design, a detachable collar that's more comfortable and easier to clean than the standard designs. It's a small innovation, but it's protected by patent. Nobody else can legally make this collar, and it sells. The innovation matters, but Winchester understands something more important: standardization. If you can standardize a design, if you can break down manufacturing into repeatable steps, if you can train workers to do one task excellently instead of every task adequately, You can produce quality products quickly and cheaply. It's the future of manufacturing, and Winchester gets it intuitively. The New Haven Shirt Manufacturing Company grows. More workers, more machines, more production. New Haven is perfect for this. The city is becoming an industrial center. Skilled workers are available. Transportation via railroad and ship is easy. Raw materials can be brought in cheaply. Finished products can be shipped out efficiently. The first year the company profits less than $20,000. Decent, but not remarkable. Winchester and Davies are learning the business, refining processes, building relationships with retailers, establishing the brand. Within a decade, they're grossing $300,000 annually. $300,000 in the 1850s for shirts and collars. Think about that for a second. Winchester started with nothing, born to a widowed mother with 5 kids and a failing farm. Worked from age 6, almost no education. And by age 48, he's making $300,000 a year manufacturing shirts. That's real wealth. That's build a mansion money. That's invest in risky ventures money. That's change your family's trajectory for generations money. But Winchester isn't satisfied. He's made his fortune in shirts, but shirts don't fascinate him. What fascinates him is the manufacturing process itself, the machinery, the innovation, the scaling up of production. He's wealthy now, comfortable. But comfortable isn't the same as ambitious, and Oliver Winchester has never been comfortable with comfort. He's watching the firearms industry. New Haven has gun makers, small operations mostly, but the industry is changing. And someone's going to figure out repeating firearms, guns that can fire multiple shots without reloading. Whoever cracks that problem will make a fortune. Military contracts, civilian sales, export markets. The potential is enormous. By 1855, Winchester is wealthy from shirts and looking for his next challenge. Most wealthy men his age are thinking about retirement, about legacy, about leisure. Winchester is thinking about opportunity. And that's when he hears about 2 guys in Norwich, Connecticut, Horace Smith and Daniel B. Wesson, who are trying to build a repeating rifle. They've formed a company called Volcanic Repeating Arms, and they've designed something revolutionary. A lever-action rifle with a tubular magazine that holds multiple rounds. Most investors hear experimental firearms company with unproven technology and walk away. Winchester becomes the largest stockholder because Winchester has spent his entire life betting on himself, and he's never lost yet. The Volcanic Repeating Arms Company is dying when Winchester invests, slowly, painfully dying. Smith & Wesson have designed a lever-action rifle with a tubular magazine that holds multiple cartridges, and in concept, it's brilliant. Revolutionary even. You work the lever, it ejects the spent cartridge, chambers a fresh one, and you're ready to fire again. In theory, you can fire multiple shots in rapid succession without the long, vulnerable reloading process that defines warfare in the 1850s. In execution, it's complete garbage. The problem isn't the rifle mechanism. The lever action works. The tubular magazine works. The problem is the ammunition. Volcanic rifles fire what's called a rocket ball cartridge, essentially a hollow bullet filled with black powder and sealed with a cork. The bullet itself contains the propellant. There's no brass casing, no primer, just a bullet, powder, and cork, and it barely works. The rocket ball has almost no power. Soldiers testing it report that the bullet barely punches through heavy clothing. Against leather, forget it. Against any kind of fortification or cover, useless. You could shoot someone at close range and they might not even notice. It's a repeating rifle that repeats firing bullets that don't do anything. The Volcanic Repeating Arms Company burns through money trying to fix the ammunition problem. Smith and Wesson are inventors, brilliant mechanically, but they can't solve this. They keep redesigning the cartridge, keep testing, keep failing. The company is hemorrhaging cash. By 1857, Smith and Wesson bail. They take their mechanical knowledge and their gunsmithing expertise and go start a revolver company. Good choice. Smith and Wesson revolvers make them famous and wealthy. But they leave Volcanic Repeating Arms near bankruptcy. With a rifle nobody wants because it fires bullets nobody fears. The The company is nearly worthless. Most investors would panic. Cut losses, move on. Write it off as a failed venture and put the money into something proven. Not Oliver Winchester. Winchester looks at this failing rifle company with terrible ammunition and sees something everyone else misses. The lever action mechanism itself is absolutely brilliant. The problem isn't the rifle design. The problem is the ammunition. Fix the ammunition and you've got something that will change warfare, change hunting, change the entire firearms industry. He gains controlling interest in the company for pennies on the dollar. Other investors are desperate to get out. Winchester is buying up shares like they're going on sale, which they are. He renames it the New Haven Arms Company and moves operations to New Haven, where he can keep direct oversight. Then Winchester does something that defines his entire business philosophy. He hires the smartest guy in the room and gets out of his way. Benjamin Tyler Henry. Plant superintendent. Henry is a mechanical genius, trained gunsmith. He understands firearms in a way Winchester never will. Winchester knows manufacturing and business. Henry knows guns. Winchester gives Henry a clear directive: fix the ammunition. Make this rifle work. And then Winchester, who's never designed a firearm in his life, steps back and lets Henry work. Henry gets to work redesigning everything about the ammunition. He throws out the entire rocket ball concept, designs a proper metallic cartridge with a brass casing, develops a .44 caliber rimfire cartridge where the primer is embedded in the rim of the brass case. When the firing pin strikes the rim, it ignites the primer, which ignites the powder, which propels the bullet. It's reliable. It's powerful. It actually works. Then Henry improves the rifle mechanism itself, refines the lever action, makes it smoother, more reliable, faster to cycle, strengthens components, improves the magazine tube. He's not just fixing Winchester's rifle, he's creating something new. October 16th, 1860. Benjamin Tyler Henry patents what becomes known as the Henry rifle, and everything changes. The Henry rifle is the first commercially successful repeating rifle that actually works as advertised. Lever action. Tubular magazine holds 15 rounds. Brass receiver that won't rust. .44 caliber rimfire cartridge with real stopping power. You can fire 15 shots in about 60 seconds without reloading. For context, most soldiers in the 1860s are using muzzle-loading rifles that give you maybe 3 shots per minute if you're fast and well-trained. The Henry rifle gives you 15. The Civil War breaks out in 1861. The Union Army, in its infinite wisdom, decides the Henry rifle is too expensive and too complicated for standard issue. The government buys maybe a few thousand for testing. That's it. But here's the thing about American soldiers. They're allowed to buy their own weapons. Officers especially, but enlisted men too if they have the money. And soldiers who've seen the Henry rifle in action, who've watched someone fire 15 shots in a minute, start buying them with their own money. About 12,000 Henry rifles make it into the Civil War, purchased privately by Union soldiers who understood that 15 shots beats 3 shots. Confederate soldiers called them that damned Yankee rifle you could load on Sunday and shoot all week. It's a grudging compliment wrapped in frustration. When you're facing someone with a Henry rifle and you've got a single-shot muzzle loader, you're outgunned by a factor of 5 to 1 in practical terms. But Winchester has a problem. Benjamin Tyler Henry wants more money for his invention, wants royalties, wants recognition, wants a share of the profits that reflect his contribution. And Winchester, who bought this company cheap and rebuilt it, who funded all the development, who took all the risk, says no. They end up in a lawsuit. It gets ugly. Nasty accusations. Legal briefs arguing over who contributed what. The courts eventually side with Winchester. He owns the company. He funded the development. The patent belongs to the company. Henry gets nothing beyond his salary. It's legally correct. Morally, it's complicated. Henry designed the rifle and the ammunition. His genius made it work. But Winchester took the risk, invested the money, and owned the company. Who deserves the credit? Who deserves the profit? The courts say Winchester. history mostly agrees, though Henry's name survives on the rifle itself. May 22, 1866, Winchester reorganizes the company. New name, Winchester Repeating Arms Company. He brings in Nelson King, another talented gun designer who adds a loading gate on the side of the receiver. The Henry rifle required you to remove the magazine tube to reload, which was awkward. King's loading gate lets you feed cartridges directly into the magazine without disassembly. It's a huge improvement. Faster reloading, less complicated, more practical for field use. Winchester's first product under the new name, the Model 1866, immediately nicknamed the Yellow Boy because of its brass receiver that gleams golden yellow in sunlight. It's an improved Henry rifle. King's loading gate, stronger construction, better sights, available in different calibers, and it sells well. Winchester starts exporting to Europe, to South America, to anywhere people need reliable firearms. The company is profitable, growing, successful. By 1870, Winchester Repeating Arms has outgrown the Bridgeport facility where they'd been manufacturing. The company needs space, flat land with railroad access for shipping, room for workers to live nearby. Space to expand as orders increase. Winchester finds it in New Haven, at the site of the old Newhall Carriage Company on Munson and Canal Streets. Perfect location. The land is flat and cheap. The railroad runs right past. Workers can walk to the factory from nearby neighborhoods. Coal can be delivered directly by train. It's ideal for a growing manufacturing operation. Winchester relocates the factory to New Haven and prepares to make the rifle that will define his legacy. The rifle that will make Winchester synonymous with the American West. The rifle that will generate mythology that outlives everyone involved. The rifle that will become a legend. 1873. Winchester Repeating Arms releases the new model of 1873. It's not the most powerful rifle on the market. It's not the most accurate rifle available. It's not the longest range rifle you can buy, but it becomes the most famous gun in American history. Why? Because it works. Because it's available. Because Winchester knows how to manufacture at scale and market aggressively. And because the American West is being settled by people who value rapid firepower over long-range precision. The Model 1873 features a lever-action mechanism similar to the Model 1866, but with a steel frame instead of brass. Stronger, more durable. It fires a centerfire cartridge, the 4440 Winchester centerfire, which is more reliable than rimfire. The tubular magazine holds 15 rounds. The lever action is smooth and fast. A practiced shooter can fire all 15 rounds in about 60 seconds. Rapid fire capability that no other rifle available to civilians can match. Think about what that means on the frontier. You're a settler heading west. You need a rifle for hunting, for protection, for survival. Do you want a single-shot rifle that's slightly more accurate at long range? Or do you want 15 shots in a minute? For most people, the answer is obvious. 15 shots wins. Billy the Kid carries a Winchester Model 1873. Theodore Roosevelt owns one. Settlers heading west buy them. Lawmen carry them. Outlaws steal them. The rifle becomes ubiquitous across the American West during the 1870s and 80s. Between 1873 and 1919. When production finally ends, Winchester manufactures 720,610 Model 1873s. That's not including copies made by other manufacturers, knockoffs, and unauthorized reproductions. The rifle is everywhere. But here's where the story gets complicated. Here's where mythology diverges from reality. The slogan everyone knows, the gun that won the West. That phrase was coined by a Winchester engineer named Edwin Pugsley in 1919. 1919. The West was already won by then. The frontier had been officially closed since 1890. Native American resistance had been crushed. The cattle drives were over. The Wild West of popular imagination was already becoming history. The phrase is past tense marketing, not contemporary reality. It's a slogan created nearly 50 years after the rifle's introduction, looking backward at a romanticized past. And here's the thing that complicates the mythology even further. The Model 1873 wasn't even the most powerful rifle of its era. The Sharps Model 1874, introduced just a year later, fired a much more powerful cartridge. The 4570 government cartridge used in Springfield rifles hit harder and reached farther. Buffalo hunters preferred Sharps rifles because they could drop a buffalo at long range. Long-range marksmen competing in shooting competitions preferred Sharps or other single-shot rifles because they were more accurate at distance. So if the Model 1873 wasn't the most powerful and wasn't the most accurate, why did it become legendary? Availability, aggressive marketing, rapid-fire capability, and the simple fact that Winchester produced them in massive quantities and sold them everywhere. The Model 1873 was the rifle you could actually buy in stock at a reasonable price that gave you 15 shots instead of one. For most people on the frontier, that mattered more than long-range accuracy. But let's be honest about the mythology. The gun that won the West. At the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876, probably the most famous battle of the Indian Wars, Sioux and Cheyenne warriors carried at least 8 Winchester Model 1873s captured from settlers and traders. The U.S. cavalry? They had single-shot Springfield rifles. So when people talk about the gun that won the West, and they might want to remember which side at Little Bighorn had the Winchesters and which side lost. The mythology doesn't care about historical complexity. Hollywood certainly doesn't care. 1950, James Stewart stars in a movie called Winchester 73. The rifle becomes iconic, American, part of the founding mythology of the frontier. Winchester leans into the marketing hard. The company sells the myth as much as the rifle, and it works. The myth sells rifles. Premium versions of the Model 1873 were available too. The 1 of 1,000 grade, hand-selected for exceptional accuracy, sold for $100, about 5 times the price of a standard model. Only 136 were ever made. Today, if you can find an authentic 1 of 1,000 model 1873, you're looking at 6 figures at auction. The mythology has monetary value that exceeds the original manufacturing cost by orders of magnitude. By 1887, Winchester employs 600 workers in New Haven. By 1900, over 1,000. The factory keeps expanding. New buildings going up, more production capacity, more product lines. The business is booming in ways Oliver Winchester could barely have imagined when he bought that failing Volcanic Repeating Arms Company. Oliver Winchester doesn't live to see the full flowering of his creation. He dies on December 10th or 11th, 1880, at age 70. A stroke takes him quickly. His son, William Wirt Winchester, inherits the business. Then William dies of tuberculosis on March 7, 1881, just months after his father. The Winchester family's direct involvement ends there. Control passes to professional managers and other executives, but the Winchester name stays on every product. The legacy matters, the brand matters, the reputation matters. Through the 1880s and 90s, Winchester Repeating Arms prospers. John Moses Browning, perhaps the greatest firearms designer in American history, works with Winchester during this period, designing the models 1886, 1892, and 1894. The Model 1894 lever-action rifle becomes one of the best-selling sporting rifles in history. Over 7 million are produced over the next century. It's a deer rifle, a ranch rifle. A practical, affordable, reliable firearm that does exactly what it's supposed to do. Winchester is an American success story. A penniless farm kid who couldn't afford education built this. He saw opportunity where others saw failure, invested when others retreated, and created a company that employs thousands and produces rifles recognized worldwide. The company he founded is thriving, profitable, growing. And then 1914 arrives. World War I erupts in Europe, and Winchester is about to get bigger than anyone imagined, bigger than the company can sustain. Then 1914 hits. June 28th, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated in Sarajevo. Within weeks, Europe descends into war. Britain, France, Russia on one side. Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire on the other, and every single nation needs rifles. Desperately. Before the war, Winchester Repeating Arms employs about 1,000 workers in New Haven. The factory covers maybe 100,000 square feet. It's a solid, profitable manufacturing operation. Sporting rifles, some military contracts, export sales. Steady business. Respectable. When the war contracts start arriving from allied nations, everything changes. Changes fast. Britain needs rifles. Their soldiers are fighting in France with outdated equipment, and British manufacturing capacity can't keep up with demand. France needs rifles. They're taking catastrophic casualties, burning through equipment faster than they can replace it. Russia needs rifles. The Tsar's armies are poorly equipped, and Russian manufacturing is primitive compared to Western standards. All of them turn to America. And Winchester, already one of America's premier firearms manufacturers, is positioned perfectly to deliver. The company starts expanding immediately. New buildings going up across the 75-acre complex. New machinery ordered from across America and Europe. Recruiting workers from across New England and beyond. The factory that employed 1,000 workers in 1914 will employ over 17,000 by 1917. By the time the United States officially enters the war in April 1917, the Winchester factory in New Haven covers 3 million square feet. 3 million square feet of manufacturing space. The complex includes machine shops with hundreds of precision machines, a brass mill producing cartridge casings, woodworking shops crafting rifle stocks, assembly lines where rifles come together from hundreds of individual components, a power plant, the largest in Connecticut, generating electricity to run all the machinery, storage warehouses, quality control facilities, loading docks where finished rifles are crated and shipped to war. Employment explodes to over 17,500 workers. Some sources say the peak reaches 19,000, 3 shifts running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The factory never stops. The machines never cool. The production lines never pause. The war is consuming rifles faster than anyone can build them, and Winchester is racing to keep up. Think about that scale for a second. 1 out of every 10 New Haven residents works at Winchester during the war years. 1 out of 10. Walk down any street in New Haven between 1914 and 1918, and every 10th person you pass is building rifles for the war. The factory isn't just a business. It's a city unto itself, an industrial complex that defines the entire community. The production numbers are absolutely staggering. Winchester manufactures 545,000 M1917 Enfield rifles, the most widely used rifle by American soldiers in World War I. The M1917 is a British design adapted for American production, chambered in 3006 Springfield, and Winchester produces over 500,000 of them. American soldiers carrying Winchester-made rifles across the trenches of France into the nightmare of industrial warfare. Winchester produces about 250,000 pattern 1914 rifles in .303 British caliber for the British Army. British soldiers fighting at the Somme, at Passchendaele, at Ypres, many of them carrying rifles made in New Haven, Connecticut. Approximately 300,000 Model 1895 lever-action rifles for Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Russian soldiers fighting the German and Austro-Hungarian armies with Winchester rifles, though many of these rifles never reach the front before the Russian Revolution collapses the Tsarist regime. 14,000 Browning automatic rifles, the famous BAR, a semi-automatic rifle designed by John Browning that gives a single soldier the firepower of an entire squad. Winchester starts producing them in 1918, just months before the war ends. 900 million rounds of small arms ammunition, cartridges for rifles, for machine guns, for pistols. The brass mill runs continuously, stamping out casings, loading powder, seeding bullets, quality checking every round. 900 million rounds. Enough ammunition to fill warehouses, enough to supply entire armies. Winchester modifies Model 1897 pump-action shotguns into what soldiers call trench brooms. Shotguns for close-quarters combat in the narrow, muddy trenches of the Western Front. The Germans formally protest to the United States that shotguns are inhumane weapons of war. The irony of complaining about shotguns while deploying poison gas apparently escapes them. The military presence at the factory is everywhere. 17 commissioned officers oversee production quality and specifications. 15 enlisted men handle logistics and coordination. 350 civilian inspectors, hired and trained by the military, check every rifle that comes off the line. Nothing ships without inspection. Nothing goes to soldiers without verification that it meets spec. Lives depend on these rifles functioning in mud, in rain, in cold, under conditions that would break inferior equipment. Major H.J. Smith serves as Chief Ordnance Inspector. He's responsible for the entire quality control operation. Every rifle that fails inspection gets tagged and sent back for rework. Every batch of ammunition that doesn't meet tolerance gets scrapped. The standards are unforgiving because the consequences of failure are measured in soldiers' lives. Inside the factory, the noise is overwhelming. Hundreds of machines stamping, cutting, drilling, milling metal, the clang of hammers, the whine of grinding wheels, the rhythmic thump of presses, the constant background roar of the power plant. Workers communicate by hand signals because shouting doesn't work over the machinery noise. The air smells like machine oil, hot metal, and the cutting fluid used to cool drill bits and saw blades. The heat is brutal in summer. 3 million square feet of factory space, much of it without air conditioning, full of machinery generating heat, in Connecticut summer humidity. Workers sweat through their clothes by mid-morning. In winter, the factory is cold despite the heat from the machines. The buildings are too big to heat efficiently, and fuel costs matter even during a war. But the wages are good, really good. Winchester pays better than almost any other employer in New Haven, good enough that workers can buy homes, raise families, build savings. The company is desperate for labor and willing to pay for it. Good enough that black workers, facing discrimination across most of American industry, can find good-paying work at Winchester. The factory is integrated by necessity, if not by ideology. They need workers, and workers who can do the job get hired regardless of race. Winchester builds entire neighborhoods for workers, actually builds them. The company works with developers Joseph Sheldon and John W. Bishop to construct dense worker housing around the factory. 2- and 3-story wood frame houses on Admiral Street, Henry Street, Munson Street, Sheffield Street, Mansfield Street, and Dixwell Avenue. Small houses, nothing fancy, but decent, affordable. Close enough to walk to work. Workers live in neighborhoods where everyone works at the factory. Everyone's lives revolve around the same shifts, the same work, the same community. The neighborhoods develop their own character. Irish immigrants cluster in certain blocks. Italian workers, recruited specifically by Winchester agents who travel to Italy to hire workers, settle together. Winchester doesn't just hire Italians, the company teaches them English, teaches them baseball, teaches them ballroom dancing, teaches them to be American. It's paternalistic, but it's also community building. These workers arrive in America and immediately have employment, housing, and social structure. Winchester builds social infrastructure too. Drama clubs perform plays. Social clubs host dances and dinners. There's a basement rifle range in the Winchester Clubhouse where workers can practice marksmanship, a restaurant where workers can eat lunch without leaving the complex. Company newspapers, Winchester Live and Winchester News, keep workers informed about production goals, social events, policy changes. The factory becomes the center of life for thousands of families. Your father works at Winchester. Your uncle works at Winchester. Your neighbor works at Winchester. Kids grow up knowing they'll probably work at Winchester too. It's not just employment, it's identity, it's community, it's the foundation of prosperity for entire neighborhoods. One historian studying this period later writes, "The high point of Connecticut industry probably came together in 1917 and 1918. Winchester at peak production, employing 17,500 people, running 3 shifts continuously, producing rifles and ammunition that are literally changing the outcome of a world war. It's American manufacturing at its absolute height, it's industrial capitalism working exactly as envisioned. It's prosperity flowing from production. It's also completely unsustainable." November 11th, 1918, 11 a.m., the armistice is signed. World War I ends. Soldiers stop fighting, and overnight those war contracts Winchester has been fulfilling for 4 years vanish. Just stop immediately. No more British orders, no more French orders, no more American military orders. The war is over, and nations that were desperate for rifles just days ago suddenly don't need a single one more. Winchester is at the absolute peak of its power in November 1918. 17,500 workers, 3 million square feet of factory space, the largest industrial operation in Connecticut, machinery optimized for military production, supply contracts extending months into the future. And suddenly, none of it matters. The company has a problem, a massive, existential problem. Here's what happened. To finance the wartime expansion, all those new buildings, all that new machinery, all that increased capacity, Winchester borrowed heavily. Bonds and notes from J.P. Morgan and other major lenders. Millions of dollars in debt, multiple millions. The strategy made perfect sense during the war. Borrow money, expand capacity, fulfill lucrative military contracts, pay back the debt from war profits. It's a sound business model when demand is guaranteed, but the demand just vanished. The war is over. Nations that needed millions of rifles now need zero. And Winchester is left with enormous debt, massive overcapacity, and no customers. Sales collapse from producing hundreds of thousands of military rifles annually to selling maybe 150,000 sporting firearms per year. The wartime production was 4 or 5 times the peacetime market. The company built capacity for war and now has to operate in peace. The math doesn't work. The debt payments don't stop just because the revenue collapsed. Most companies would downsize immediately, lay off workers to match reduced demand, sell excess machinery, close buildings, focus on core business, sporting rifles and shotguns for hunters and sportsmen, pay down the debt slowly but steadily. It would be painful, but survivable. Winchester's executives have a different idea, a terrible idea, an idea so catastrophically bad that it will bankrupt the company within 13 years. They look at all that surplus manufacturing capacity, all those machines, all those workers, all those buildings that aren't making rifles anymore, and think, why should this capacity sit idle? Why build only rifles when we've got all these resources available? Winchester is going to diversify. The company is going to use its manufacturing capability to enter the consumer goods market, leverage the Winchester name, become a general manufacturing conglomerate instead of just a firearms company. It's forward-thinking. It's modern business strategy. It's the kind of thing Harvard business professors would probably praise as innovative thinking. It's also complete insanity. Winchester starts making kitchen knives, roller skates, refrigerators, flashlights, safety razors, hand saws, wrenches, screwdrivers, scissors, baseball bats, basketball hoops, fishing gear. Anything and everything the executives think might sell using Winchester's manufacturing capacity. Let that sink in for a moment. The company that made the gun that won the West is now manufacturing roller skates and refrigerators. They merge with Simmons Hardware Company, creating the Winchester Stores concept. The idea is to combine Winchester firearms and tools with Simmons' Keen Cutter brand hardware and retail stores that sell everything for home and sport. Like a Sears, but with the Winchester name. Stores open across America, Winchester merchandise on shelves. The brand expanding beyond firearms into general merchandising. On paper, it makes sense. Winchester has name recognition. Winchester has manufacturing capacity. Winchester has distribution networks. Why not leverage those assets across multiple product lines? Diversification reduces risk, right? If rifle sales decline, refrigerator sales compensate. It's textbook modern business strategy, except Winchester doesn't know how to make refrigerators, doesn't know how to market consumer appliances, doesn't understand the competitive dynamics of the kitchen knife market or the roller skate market or any market except firearms. The company is trying to compete with established manufacturers who've spent decades perfecting their products and understanding their customers. And customers don't want kitchen knives from a rifle company. They want kitchen knives from kitchen knife companies. They want Winchester to make rifles. That's what Winchester means. That's what the brand represents. When people see the Winchester name, they think quality firearms, not quality scissors. The diversification eats money, swallows cash without generating sufficient revenue. The products don't sell well enough to justify the production costs. The Winchester store's concept struggles to compete with established retailers. The company is bleeding money trying to be something it's not, while still servicing that massive debt from wartime expansion. 1929 arrives, October. The stock market crashes. The Great Depression begins. The American economy implodes. And suddenly, sporting rifles, luxury items that nobody really needs, become the last thing most Americans can afford. Sales collapse even further. Winchester tries desperately to salvage the situation. In 1929, they separate from Simmons Hardware Company, abandon the Winchester store's concept, return to focusing on firearms. Too late. The damage is done. The company has spent years bleeding money on failed diversification, instead of focusing on core business and paying down debt. The Depression economy makes recovery impossible. 1931. Winchester Repeating Arms Company enters receivership, files for bankruptcy. The company that armed 2 world wars, that made the gun that won the West, that employed 17,000 people during wartime, that created middle-class prosperity for thousands of families, can't pay its bills. The banks want their money. The bondholders want their money. The suppliers want their money. There's no more money. The company is insolvent. December 22, 1931. Winchester Repeating Arms goes to bankruptcy auction. The factory, the machinery, the inventory, the brand name, the patents, everything goes on the auction block. The company that Oliver Winchester built from a failed rifle maker into an American icon is being sold for pennies on the dollar to whoever bids highest. The buyer is a company most people have never heard of, Western Cartridge Company, owned by a family named Olin. Based in East Alton, Illinois, an ammunition manufacturer. They're buying Winchester not to strip it for parts, but because they believe the brand can be saved, because they understand firearms in a way the previous executives didn't, because they see value where others see failure, which ironically is exactly how Oliver Winchester bought Volcanic Repeating Arms 75 years earlier. History doesn't repeat, but it sure rhymes. John M. Olin isn't like most corporate raiders circling bankrupt companies. He's not some Wall Street financier looking to asset strip and flip. His father, Franklin, founded Western Cartridge Company back in 1892 in East Alton, Illinois. Built it from nothing into a regional ammunition powerhouse. Made quality ammunition, built a solid reputation, ran an honest business. During World War I, while Winchester was borrowing millions to expand rifle production, Western Cartridge was making steady money supplying ammunition. Same war, different strategy. Western stayed focused on what they knew, ammunition, and prospered without overextending. When Winchester accumulated crushing debt, Western accumulated cash. Different approaches, very different outcomes. John Olin grew up in the ammunition business. His childhood was spent around factories, around production lines, around workers who made things with their hands. He understands manufacturing not as an abstract financial concept, but as a physical process requiring skill, precision, and care. He respects craftsmanship, values quality, believes that cutting corners to save costs ultimately destroys value. When Western Cartridge purchases Winchester at the bankruptcy auction on December 22, 1931, John sees opportunity, a legendary brand destroyed by bad management and worse timing, a factory with skilled workers and good equipment, a product line with genuine market demand once the economy recovers. He's not buying Winchester to liquidate it. He's buying it to save it. The purchase makes strategic sense too. Western makes ammunition. Winchester makes rifles. Rifles need ammunition. Ammunition gets sold to rifle owners. The two businesses complement each other perfectly. Western can supply Winchester ammunition for testing and quality control. Winchester can recommend Western ammunition to customers. The synergy is obvious. 1935. Western Cartridge and Winchester officially merge as Winchester Western. The combined company has ammunition expertise from Western and firearms expertise from Winchester. John M. Olin becomes vice president, then head of the Winchester division. And he brings a philosophy that's been absent from Winchester management since Oliver Winchester died. Quality matters more than quick profits. Through the Depression, Olin doesn't slash and burn. He doesn't gut the workforce to show short-term profit improvement. He streamlines manufacturing where it makes sense, experiments with new tooling methods to improve efficiency without sacrificing quality, maintains the skilled workforce as much as possible through the worst economic conditions in American history. It's not charity. Olin understands that skilled workers are the company's most valuable asset. Lose them to layoffs and you can't get them back when demand returns. Olin champions quality products. The Model 52 bolt-action .22 rifle, a precision rifle for target shooting, beautifully made, hand-fitted, accurate enough for Olympic-level competition. Expensive. Not many people can afford it during the Depression, but Olin keeps it in production because it represents what Winchester should be. The best, the Model 21 side-by-side shotgun. Double-barrel shotgun built to the highest standards. Again, expensive. Again, limited market during hard times. Again, Olin keeps producing it because it's excellent and because excellence is the point. These aren't big sellers during the Depression, but they maintain Winchester's reputation. They remind the market that Winchester makes quality firearms for people who appreciate quality. When the economy recovers, that reputation will matter. Olin is playing the long game. 1939 arrives. War is coming again. Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France declare war on Germany. The United States isn't in it yet, but everyone can see where this is heading. Winchester starts tooling up for military production again, but this time under very different circumstances. This time, the company isn't going to borrow recklessly and overextend. This time, they're going to fulfill contracts without destroying the business. The U.S. government issues Winchester an educational contract to tool up for M1 Garand rifle production. The Garand is the new standard U.S. military rifle, semi-automatic, gas-operated, fires the .30-06 Springfield cartridge from an 8-round on-block clip. It's the most advanced infantry rifle in the world. Winchester is tasked with learning how to manufacture it to government specifications. December 1941. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. The United States enters World War II, and Winchester goes to war again. The production ramp-up is enormous, but it's controlled. Winchester doesn't expand recklessly this time. The company uses existing capacity first, then expands carefully. No repeat of World War I's borrow-and-build disaster. Winchester produces over 500,000 M1 Garand rifles during World War II. They're the only private contractor making Garands. Every other M1 comes from government arsenals, like Springfield Armory. General George S. Patton later calls the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. That's hyperbole, but the Garand is genuinely excellent. Reliable, powerful, semi-automatic when most armies still use bolt-action rifles. And Winchester makes over 500,000 of them. The company produces 818,072 M1 carbines. The M1 carbine is a Winchester design. The U.S. Army issued specifications for a lightweight rifle, something smaller and lighter than the Garand for troops who don't need full-power rifle capability. Tankers, officers, support troops. Winchester's engineering team designed a working prototype in under 2 weeks. 2 weeks from specifications to functional rifle. That's not just fast. That's brilliant engineering under pressure. Winchester wins the contract, produces about 13% of all M1 carbines made during the war. The carbine becomes one of the most produced firearms in history, over 6 million made total. Winchester makes more than 800,000 of them. They build 17,500 M2 carbines, the select fire version that can shoot fully automatic, 1,108 T3 carbines for testing. Continue producing Model 97 and Model 12 shotguns modified as trench guns for close quarters combat. Employment hits 19,000 to 20,000 workers, the highest number in Winchester's history, even higher than World War I peak. The factory runs 3 shifts around the clock. The power plant runs continuously. The neighborhoods around the factory are alive with activity. Everyone working, everyone contributing, everyone prospering. New Haven is booming again. Families who left during the Depression return for factory work. Black workers who face discrimination across most of American industry find good-paying work at Winchester. The wages are high enough to buy homes, build savings, raise families with genuine middle-class security. 1944. The Olin Companies organize under Olin Industries, Incorporated. It's becoming a conglomerate, but firearms remain a core business. After the war, Winchester becomes the first civilian manufacturer of the M14 rifle, the Garand's successor. The Korean War arrives in 1950, and Winchester is still producing military rifles. John M. Olin runs Winchester with pride through the 1940s and 50s. World War II, Korean War, into the prosperous Eisenhower years. Under his leadership, Winchester thrives, not through cheap cost-cutting, not through gimmicks, through quality, through craftsmanship, through respecting what the brand means. Workers prosper, get good wages, buy homes, send their kids to college, build lives around steady employment at a company that values their skills. New Haven booms. The factory is the economic engine of the entire city. Everything revolves around Winchester. Schools, stores, restaurants, churches, all supported by Winchester wages. 1954. Olin Industries merges with Mathieson Chemical to form Olin Mathieson Chemical Corporation. Suddenly, Winchester is part of a 35,000-employee conglomerate with 46 domestic and 17 foreign plants, making chemicals, metals, ammunition, and firearms. The company is massive. Diversified across multiple industries, Winchester Firearms is now just one division of many, but Winchester remains profitable. The firearms division still matters. The company still makes quality products. The brand still means something. Through the 1950s, Winchester keeps making hand-fitted rifles. The pre-war quality standards remain. Skilled machinists working with tight tolerances. Gun stockers fitting wood to metal by hand. Craftsmen who take pride in their work creating firearms that will last generations. Collectors and hunters today look at 1950s Winchester rifles with respect. These are still real Winchesters, still built with the care that John Olin insisted upon. Winchester Model 70 rifles from the 1950s are particularly prized. The Model 70 is based on the Mauser 98 Action, considered by many to be the finest bolt-action rifle design ever created. Winchester's version has a claw extractor, a blade ejector, hand-fitted tolerances. It's a hunting rifle built to the standards of a custom rifle. Accurate, reliable, beautiful. 1963, John M. Olin retires after 30-plus years of leadership. He becomes honorary chairman. Steps back from day-to-day operations. He's watched over Winchester through bankruptcy, depression, World War, prosperity, built the company back to health, maintained quality, kept the brand valuable. And now, control of Winchester passes to chemical industry executives who've never designed a firearm in their lives, who've never worked on a production floor, who understand chemicals and business school theory but don't understand what Winchester means. For 30 years, Winchester thrived under John Olin's stewardship. Workers prospered, New Haven boomed, quality mattered. And in 1963, when Olin retires, chemical executives take over, and they're about to destroy in a few years what took a century to build. 1964. The chemical executives at Olin Mathieson Chemical Corporation, men like John Henske and John Johnstone, guys who came up through chemical industry management, look at Winchester's manufacturing processes and see inefficiency everywhere. They see hand-fitted parts requiring skilled labor. They see machining operations that take time and precision. They see costs. They look at Remington Arms, Winchester's primary competitor. Remington is cutting costs aggressively, using cast parts instead of forged steel, using stamped metal instead of machining, using press checkering instead of hand-cut checkering, and Remington is gaining market share by undercutting Winchester on price. The chemical executives make a decision. Winchester needs to modernize, needs to cut costs, needs to compete on price with Remington. Quality is expensive. Craftsmanship is expensive. Hand-fitting is expensive. And expensive means lower margins. Lower margins mean lower profits. Lower profits mean bad quarterly reports. They're going to fix that. They revamp the production line. The legendary Winchester Model 70, a rifle John Olin championed, a rifle built to Mauser-style standards, a rifle that serious hunters and shooters considered one of the finest production rifles in the world, gets redesigned for cost savings. The changes replace forged steel parts with cast parts. Casting is cheaper than forging, faster too. The metal isn't quite as strong, the structure isn't quite as refined, but it's cheaper. Replace hand-cut checkering on the wooden stock with press checkering. Hand-cut checkering takes a skilled worker with a checkering tool carving the pattern by hand. Takes time. Takes skill. Press checkering uses a heated die to stamp the pattern into the wood. Fast. Cheap. Looks similar from a distance. Remove the Mauser-style claw extractor and replace it with a smaller hook extractor. The claw extractor is big, strong, reliable, grabs the cartridge rim firmly, and pulls it out with authority. The hook extractor is smaller, cheaper, lighter, works fine under normal conditions, less reliable under adverse conditions, but it costs less to manufacture. Replace the blade ejector with a spring-loaded plunger. The blade ejector is a piece of spring steel that kicks the empty cartridge case out firmly. The plunger is simpler, cheaper, and again, works fine under normal conditions. Free-float the barrel and market it as an improvement. Floating the barrel means the barrel doesn't touch the stock except at the receiver. In theory, it can improve accuracy by eliminating stock pressure on the barrel. In practice, the old system worked perfectly fine, and the change is mostly about reducing stock-fitting labor costs. Change stock designs to simplify manufacturing, less contouring, less hand-fitting. Simpler shapes that can be roughed out faster with less skill required. The result? Winchester can produce rifles faster and cheaper. Margins improve. Costs come down. The quarterly reports look better. The chemical executives get bonuses for improving profitability, and the rifles are garbage compared to what came before. The quality decline is immediate and noticeable to anyone who knows firearms. The cast parts don't have the strength or durability of forged steel. The press checkering looks cheap and wears down faster than hand-cut checkering. The hook extractor isn't as reliable as the claw extractor. The plunger ejector isn't as positive as the blade ejector. The rifles still function. They go bang when you pull the trigger. But the craftsmanship is gone. The attention to detail is gone. The quality that made Winchester rifles heirlooms you pass to your grandchildren is gone. Collectors and hunters notice immediately. Gun magazines notice. The firearms community starts calling them bump-and-run rifles, rifles that look okay at first glance but reveal their cheapness quickly. The fit and finish that defined Winchester disappears. The precision that John Olin championed vanishes. The rifles feel cheap because they are cheaper. And Winchester's reputation, built over 90-plus years, shatters, just breaks. The firearms community creates a dividing line that exists to this day. Pre-64 Winchesters versus post-64 Winchesters. Pre-64 models are collectible, valuable, desirable. Serious collectors pay premium prices for rifles made before the changes. Post-64 models are considered inferior, avoided, disparaged. Go to any gun show today. Look at Winchester Model 70s. Ask the price. If it's pre-64, you're looking at significantly higher prices than post-64. The market assigns monetary value to the quality difference. A pre-64 Model 70 might sell for $2,000 or $3,000. The equivalent post-64 model might sell for $800. Same basic rifle, massive price difference. That's the market saying quality matters, and Winchester destroyed their quality. One firearms historian later writes, "A decision that seriously wounded the Winchester brand, one some say from which the company never fully recovered." That's understated. The 1964 changes didn't wound Winchester. They killed it. Everything that happens after 1964 is just the slow death. The company keeps operating, keeps producing rifles, but the brand is mortally wounded. Here's what the chemical executives didn't understand. Winchester customers weren't buying on price. They were buying on quality and reputation. A Winchester rifle meant something. It meant you were buying the best. It meant you were buying a firearm your grandfather would respect and your grandchildren would inherit. It meant American craftsmanship at its finest. When Winchester destroyed that quality to save costs, customers left. They didn't switch to cheaper Remingtons. They switched to higher quality rifles from other manufacturers. They bought Weatherby. They bought Browning. They bought custom rifles from small makers who still valued craftsmanship. They bought anything except Winchester. Because if Winchester is just cheap stamped metal and cast parts, why pay for the Winchester name? The name only has value if it represents quality. The irony is brutal and perfect. Chemical executives trying to save money by cutting costs destroyed the brand's value. They traded a century of reputation for a few years of improved margins. They optimized for quarterly profits and destroyed long-term value. It's the exact mistake that business schools warn against, executed by people with business degrees. 1969. The company drops Matheson from its name, becomes Olin Corporation. But the damage to Winchester is permanent. The customers know. The collectors know. The hunters know. Winchester doesn't make quality rifles anymore. Winchester makes cheap rifles with a famous name. The quality is gone. The reputation is damaged. And now the consequences accelerate. Sales decline through the late 1960s. Customers who grew up trusting Winchester, whose fathers and grandfathers bought Winchester rifles, start buying other brands. The market share erodes, not quickly, slowly, steadily, irreversibly. But quality isn't the only problem. Rising labor costs through the 1960s and 70s make Winchester's manufacturing model increasingly unsustainable. Even after the '64 changes, Winchester rifles still require more skilled labor than competitors using fully automated casting and stamping processes. The factory is in New Haven, Connecticut, a high-cost region with strong unions and good wages. Competitors are building factories in the South where wages are lower and unions are weaker. Workers unionized back in 1955, International Association of Machinists, Local 609. Through the 1960s, tensions build between Olin management and Winchester workers. Wages, benefits, working conditions, job security. The workers see management cutting quality to save costs while executives earn bonuses. They see their craft being devalued. They see the company destroying the product they take pride in building. 1969, major strike, workers walk out, production halts. The factory goes silent for the first time since World War II. Eventually, they reach a settlement. Workers return. But the relationship between Olin management and Winchester workers is damaged. Trust is gone. Both sides see the other as adversary, not partner. Meanwhile, foreign competition is rising. Japan, recovering from World War II, is building modern manufacturing capacity. Japanese companies can produce firearms with lower labor costs and modern automated equipment. Brazil enters the market. Other countries with lower wages and less regulation. Winchester is competing globally now, and the competition makes rifles cheaper than New Haven can. Olin Corporation tries more diversification, trying to squeeze value from Winchester beyond rifles. 1970s, they open Wingo, an indoor shooting range in San Diego. California, indoor shooting range in San Diego, where the weather is perfect year-round, and outdoor shooting is possible every day. It fails quickly. Turns out people in San Diego don't want to shoot indoors when they can shoot outside in 70-degree sunshine. They launched Trailblazer by Winchester camping gear, trying to compete with Coleman, the established camping gear brand everyone knows and trusts. Customers want camping gear from Coleman. They want rifles from Winchester. The brand extension doesn't work. That fails too. 1978. Olin Corporation becomes the first United States corporation prosecuted for arms embargo violations. They sold Winchester rifles to private dealers in South Africa during apartheid, violating the international arms embargo. Winchester employees developed a belief that the State Department was winking at false export declarations, that the government was tacitly approving violations while maintaining official policy against them. A temporary worker named Marcia Biederman exposes the story in the New Haven Advocate. The government prosecutes. Olin is convicted. Fine imposed. It's another mark against Winchester's reputation. New Haven's overall manufacturing employment is collapsing. Not just Winchester, the entire industrial base. 1972, 9,300 factory workers citywide. 1987, 5,700. 1992, 3,500. 1997, 2,804. Yale political scientist Douglas Ray later writes, by 1997, 90% of factory jobs that existed in New Haven in 1954 had disappeared. 90%. Gone. Winchester is part of that collapse, but it's bigger than Winchester. It's the death of American manufacturing in old industrial cities. It's the shift to the Sun Belt, to foreign countries, to automation. It's the end of an era. 1979. Another strike at Winchester. This one lasts over a year. Bitter, prolonged, angry. Workers demanding job security, better wages, protection from foreign competition. Management pushing back, threatening closure, talking about moving production overseas or to non-union facilities. Neither side trusts the other. Both sides are angry. The strike drags on month after month. When the strike finally ends, Olin Corporation has made a decision. Winchester firearms can't be produced profitably in New Haven anymore. The labor costs are too high. The facility is too old. The foreign competition is too strong. The brand reputation is too damaged from the '64 quality disaster. The economics don't work. December 12, 1980. Olin Corporation sells Winchester firearms operations to the employees. The new company is called U.S. Repeating Arms Company, USRAC for short. Employee ownership. The workers own Winchester now. The American dream, right? Workers taking control of their company, saving their jobs, building prosperity together. Olin retains the Winchester brand name and the ammunition business. The ammunition division is profitable. Winchester Ammunition still sells well, but Olin licenses the Winchester name to USRAC for firearms manufacturing. USRAC can make guns with the Winchester name, but they don't own the name. Olin owns the brand. There's hope, genuine hope. Employee ownership could turn this around. Workers who care about quality, who take pride in their craft, who have generational ties to Winchester, maybe they can save it. Maybe they can restore the quality. Maybe they can compete. For a while, it looks possible. USRAC employs about 1,800 workers in the late 1980s. Production continues, rifles are made, the factory operates. New Haven still has Winchester. The legacy continues. But reality is unforgiving. 1989, U.S. Repeating Arms Company files for bankruptcy. 4 years of employee ownership, and the economics don't work. The market doesn't care who owns the company. Customers still remember the '64 quality disaster. Foreign competitors still make rifles cheaper. The high costs of operating in New Haven don't disappear because workers own the company instead of Olin. A French holding company purchases USRAC from bankruptcy, then sells it to Herstal Group, a Belgian arms manufacturer that also owns FN Herstal and Browning. Foreign ownership of an American icon, the rifle that won the West, owned by Europeans. The irony would be funny if it weren't tragic. Employment continues declining through the 1990s. 1,800 workers becomes 1,000, becomes 800, becomes 500, becomes 300. Each year, fewer workers. Each year, less production. Each year, the factory gets a little quieter, a little emptier. Sales keep falling. By the early 2000s, Winchester is selling maybe 1/3 as many guns as they sold in the late 90s. Foreign competitors, rifles from Japan, from Brazil, from Turkey, flood the American market. Cheaper rifles. Not better, just cheaper. And enough Americans buy on price that the volume matters. The brand reputation never recovered from '64. Collectors and serious hunters remember they buy pre-'64 Winchesters when they can find them. They buy other brands for new rifles. The Winchester name doesn't command respect anymore. It commands nostalgia, which doesn't pay bills. By 2006, about 200 people work at the Winchester factory. Down from 19,000 at World War II peak, down from 17,000 at World War I peak. Down from thousands of families who built their lives around Winchester employment, 200 workers left in a factory built for tens of thousands. The end comes quickly. January 17, 2006. U.S. Repeating Arms announces closure. The Winchester firearms factory in New Haven will shut down permanently. 140 years of continuous production ending. 140 years of Winchester rifles made in New Haven, Connecticut finished. The reason cited, falling demand. The company is selling only 1/3 as many firearms as 3 years ago. Can't compete with cheaper foreign production. Can't afford the overhead costs of the New Haven facility. Can't sustain operations with declining sales. The decision has been made. 186 workers will lose their jobs, not 19,000. Not even 1,000. 186 people. That's what's left of Winchester employment. 186 workers whose jobs are ending, whose careers are finished, whose livelihoods are disappearing. Mayor John DeStefano holds a desperate press conference. He's trying to save the factory, trying to find buyers, trying to do something, anything, to prevent closure. He's angry and scared because Winchester isn't just a factory. Winchester is New Haven's identity. Winchester is how the city sees itself. It's part of who we are as a nation, just like it's part of who we are as a city, DeStefano says. His voice carries frustration, disbelief, anger. Then he asks the question everyone's thinking. What are we going to have? Winchester rifles manufactured in China. Is this what we're coming to? Yes. Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what we're coming to. American icons made overseas, brands sold to foreign companies. Manufacturing shifted to wherever labor is cheapest. That's globalization. That's the 21st century. That's what happens when quality gets sacrificed for cost savings and brands get destroyed by bad management. Union Representative Everett Corey stands with workers and says simply, "Today is a sad day." Understatement of the century. Today isn't just sad. Today is the death of something that mattered, the end of a legacy that defined a city for over 100 years. U.S. Repeating Arms puts out a corporate statement. Many efforts were made to improve profitability over the past several years. However, the decision was made after exhausting all available options. Translation: we tried to save it and couldn't. Translation: the economics don't work. Translation: it's over. John Reynolds, president of Local 609, started working at Winchester in 1965. 41 years on the job. He watched the 64 quality changes destroy the brand. He participated in strikes fighting for job security. He saw foreign competition erode sales. He watched employment decline year after year. And now he's watching it end. 41 years of work, ending because the factory is closing. What do you do at 55, 60 years old when your career just ended and your skills are specific to a factory that no longer exists? March 31st, 2006, the last Winchester rifle rolls off the production line in New Haven. Model 70, Model 94, Model 1300. All discontinued. The machines stop. The power is cut. The workers clock out for the last time. 140 years of Winchester firearms production in New Haven, Connecticut ends. The buildings sit empty. 3 million square feet at peak. Now maybe 1 million square feet remaining from demolitions and conversions. All of it empty, silent. The machines are gone, sold off, or scrapped. The production lines are dismantled. The power plant is shut down. Windows are boarded up, and the buildings are toxic, contaminated with trichloroethylene and methylene chloride from a century of manufacturing. Hazardous chemicals soaked into concrete floors, into walls, into the ground. You can't just convert these buildings to apartments or offices. They need environmental remediation, expensive, complicated, time-consuming cleanup. The neighborhoods around the factory, Newhallville and Dixwell, are devastated. Families who lived there for 3 generations suddenly have no work, no employment, no economic foundation. Mom and pop stores that served Winchester workers close. because there are no more workers. Restaurants close. The economic ecosystem built around factory wages collapses. Crime increases. The crack cocaine epidemic already hit these neighborhoods hard in the 90s. Losing Winchester makes everything worse. Young men with no job prospects, no opportunities, no hope. What do? Some turn to drugs, some turn to crime, some just leave, searching for work elsewhere. Black home ownership declines. The prosperity Winchester created, good wages that let working-class black families buy homes and build equity, that's gone. Families who bought homes on Winchester wages in the 40s, 50s, 60s can't sustain ownership when there's no work. Some sell, some lose houses to foreclosure. The wealth that was built over generations dissipates. People turn to alcohol and drugs to cope with the situation. The social support structures built around factory employment, the community, the shared purpose, the dignity of work, all gone. What replaces it? Despair, hopelessness, the sense that the world moved on and left you behind. Mayor DeStefano later says the city lost not just jobs, but an identity. That's exactly right. Winchester wasn't just employment. Winchester was who New Haven was, a manufacturing city, a place that made things. A place where hard work meant prosperity. Losing Winchester means losing that identity, becoming something else, something diminished. The buildings sit empty for years, toxic brownfield sites nobody wants. Then something unexpected happens, something that will transform the neighborhood entirely, something that raises questions about who benefits from progress and who gets left behind. The rescue comes from an unlikely alliance. 4 entities that wouldn't normally work together joining forces to save the Winchester complex. Yale University, the state of Connecticut, the city of New Haven, and Olin Corporation, the company that sold Winchester firearms but still owns the brand name. Back in 1981, 25 years before the final closure, when the writing was already on the wall, these 4 entities formed Science Park Development Corporation. The plan: redevelop the 75-acre former Winchester campus into a technology and research hub, turn factory buildings into research labs, attract biotech startups, create a new economy to replace the old one, transform a manufacturing complex into a knowledge economy campus. For years, it's mostly talk and small projects. Some buildings get converted to offices and labs. A few startups move in. Progress is slow. The factory is still operating, still making rifles, so wholesale redevelopment isn't possible yet. Science Park exists more as concept than reality. The 2006 closure accelerates everything. Now the entire complex is available. All the buildings, all the land. Time to execute the vision properly. 2014. Forest City, an Ohio-based real estate developer, completes Winchester Lofts, a $60 million project converting former factory buildings into 158 rental apartments. It's the first major residential component of Science Park, the transformation from rifles to residences. They use historic tax credits to finance part of the construction. The buildings are historically significant. National Register of Historic Places, Winchester Repeating Arms Company, Historic District. Historic designation brings tax benefits that make conversion economically viable. Without those tax credits, the economics might not work. The apartments preserve some original architectural features: exposed brick walls, large industrial windows, high ceilings, hardwood floors. It's industrial chic aesthetic, loft living. The buildings that once housed rifle production lines now house young professionals. The apartments are nice, really nice. Mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, in-unit washer and dryer, modern finishes. 16 units at 60% area median income, affordable housing component required to get public funding. 16 units at 100% AMI, the rest are market rate. Rents range from $1,500 to $3,975 per month for the nicer units, $3,975 for an apartment in New Haven, Connecticut, in the neighborhood where factory workers used to buy houses for $10,000 total. Graduate students from Yale rent some units. Empty nesters from the suburbs rent others. Young professionals working in biotech or finance rent the rest. People who never set foot in a factory, never built anything with their hands, living in buildings where rifles were assembled by workers earning $20 an hour in 2006 money. The transformation continues. By 2025, over 65% of the former Winchester complex, 1.1 million square feet, has been rehabilitated, converted to offices, biotech labs, educational facilities, and more apartments. Science Park now employs about 2,000 people: biotech researchers, software developers, lab technicians, administrative staff, 2,000 people, in a space that once employed 19,000. And here's the critical thing about those 2,000 jobs. They're not factory jobs. They don't replace what was lost. They require advanced degrees, master's degrees, PhDs lab certifications, computer science skills. The people who lost their factory jobs when Winchester closed can't do this work. Their children, maybe, if they can afford college, but not them. Not the workers who built rifles for 40 years and suddenly have no marketable skills in the knowledge economy. 2024, Winchester Green breaks ground, a $90 million development, 283 apartments, 5-story building. Ground floor retail along Winchester Avenue, 12,800 square feet of restaurant and shop space, all-electric building with heat pumps, modern environmental standards. 20% affordable units via low-income housing tax credits. It's beautiful, if you're into that sort of thing. Modern architecture, clean lines, sustainable design, attractive amenity spaces, everything you'd expect from a 21st century urban development. The Winchester Center Master Plan envisions complete transformation over 5 to 10 years. Over 1,000 apartments total, retail spaces for locally owned businesses, parks and green space. 500,000 square feet of lab space for biotech and tech companies. New streets connecting neighborhoods. Mason Street, Sheffield Avenue Extension. It's comprehensive urban planning, mixed-use development, the kind of project that wins architecture awards and gets written up in urban planning journals. July 2025. Demolition begins on the last vacant factory buildings at 270 Mansfield Street. 9 buildings being torn down. The structures are contaminated, toxic chemicals from decades of manufacturing, trichloroethylene, methylene chloride, hazardous waste, $10.8 million in state funding for environmental cleanup and demolition. 12-month timeline. Stamford Wrecking Company handles the demolition. Heavy equipment tearing down buildings that stood for over a century. Brick by brick, the last physical remnants of Winchester manufacturing disappear. When demolition is complete, the site will become either 100 residential units or 100,000 square feet of commercial space. Clean, modern, expensive. No trace of what came before except a historical plaque, maybe. Right now, in 2025, you can walk down Winchester Avenue and see the transformation complete. Fussy Coffee serves $14 tuna sashimi poke bowls. Organic ingredients, sustainable sourcing. Oat milk lattes for $6. The clientele is young, educated, earning good incomes. Nobody in Fussy Coffee looks like they ever worked in a factory. You can rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $2,000 a month, a 2-bedroom for $3,000. Nice apartments in converted factory buildings with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, modern kitchens. Building amenities include fitness center, co-working space, bike storage. The parking garage charges extra. You can work at a biotech startup researching gene therapy or developing pharmaceuticals. Interesting work, important work. Well-paid work if you have the right degrees and skills. The offices are modern. The labs are state-of-the-art. Everything is clean and bright and optimized for knowledge work. What you can't do is build rifles. That's gone. The machines are gone, sold to scrappers or shipped overseas. The workers are gone, retired or working other jobs are dead. The knowledge is gone. The specific skills required to build quality firearms at scale, passed from generation to generation, lost when the factory closed. You can't get that back. Can't train new workers when there are no experienced workers to train them. Can't maintain institutional knowledge when the institution dies. New Haven calls it a renaissance. The marketing materials talk about revitalization, innovation, progress, rebirth. Science Park Development Corporation points to 2,000 jobs created, hundreds of millions in investment, historic buildings preserved, neighborhoods transformed. But walk through New Hallville today. Not the parts with new apartments and coffee shops. The parts where people, who've lived there for generations, still live. Talk to them. Ask them about the Renaissance. Ask them about progress. They'll tell you about displacement, about watching their neighborhood transform into something they can't afford, about biotech jobs they're not qualified for, jobs requiring degrees they don't have and can't afford to get, about rents rising faster than their incomes, about grandchildren who can't afford to live in the neighborhood where their grandparents bought homes on factory wages. Black home ownership in these neighborhoods has declined significantly. The prosperity Winchester created, good wages that let working-class families buy homes and build generational wealth, that prosperity is gone, replaced by rental apartments marketed to young professionals earning tech salaries. The Greater New Haven Labor History Association documented oral histories in 2013, interviewing former Winchester workers and their families. They published a book called Our Community at Winchester, the City and Its Workers, stories from people who worked there, who grew up in Winchester neighborhoods, who remember when Winchester meant community. Not just a factory. The stories are heartbreaking, workers describing the pride they felt building rifles, the craftsmanship, the skill, the sense of contributing something valuable. Families describing neighborhoods where everyone worked at Winchester, where everyone's lives revolved around the same shifts and the same work. Communities built around shared employment. Those stories matter because they document what's lost when manufacturing dies. It's not just jobs. It's not just economic activity, it's intergenerational mobility, the ability of working-class families to build wealth and pass it to their children. It's skilled trades passed from parent to child. It's neighborhoods organized around shared work. It's the dignity of making something tangible with your hands. All of that gone, replaced by what? Service jobs, gig economy, retail work that doesn't pay enough to buy a house. Science Park preserves factory buildings as historic structures. The architecture is maintained. Brick facades, large industrial windows, the physical appearance of factories. Tourists can look at the buildings and admire the industrial architecture. There's a Winchester Repeating Arms Company historic district on the National Register. 867 properties, 858 major structures, official recognition of historical significance. But there's no museum, no public memorial, no place where you can see an M1 Garand, an ITAS, and read about the workers who built 500,000 of them during World War II. No exhibit about the Model 1873. No recognition of the 19,000 people who worked 3 shifts around the clock during the war years. No acknowledgement of the communities built around factory employment. Just luxury apartments and biotech labs, new economy replacing old economy. Knowledge work replacing manual work. High-skilled replacing blue-collar. Progress maybe if you define progress as GDP growth and tax revenue. Not progress if you define it as shared prosperity and community stability. The Winchester brand still exists. Olin Corporation, now headquartered in Clayton, Missouri, still manufactures Winchester ammunition at their plant in Oxford, Mississippi. The ammunition business remains profitable. Hunters and sportsmen still buy Winchester ammunition. The brand has value in ammunition. That legacy continues. Winchester firearms are still made, just not in New Haven. Olin licenses the brand to Browning Arms Company in Ogden, Utah. Browning is owned by Herstal Group, the Belgian conglomerate that bought USRAC from bankruptcy. Some Winchester rifles are manufactured by FN Herstal in Belgium or Portugal. Some are made by Moroku Corporation in Japan and imported by Browning into the United States. Some are assembled in Portugal from parts made in Japan and Belgium. You can walk into a gun store today and buy a Winchester rifle. It'll have the Winchester name on it. Might even be a Model 70 or Model 94, reproductions of classic Winchester designs. But it wasn't made in New Haven. It wasn't made by someone whose grandfather and great-grandfather made Winchesters. It wasn't built by workers who learned the craft from previous generations. That continuity, that generational knowledge, that institutional memory, that's gone. lost when the factory closed. Can't be recovered. Oliver Fisher Winchester started with absolutely nothing. Born November 30th, 1810, to a widowed mother with 5 children and no resources. Went to work at age 6, got almost no formal education, built himself through determination, through work, through relentless ambition. Carpentry to retail, to manufacturing. Saw opportunity in a failing rifle company, invested when others retreated, built an American icon from bankruptcy, created the Model 1873 that became legend, built a factory that employed thousands. Generated prosperity for people who'd never had access to middle-class security. Immigrants arriving with nothing could get good jobs at Winchester, buy homes, raise families, build lives. That was real. That mattered. Winchester Repeating Arms survived Oliver's death in 1880, survived his son's death in 1881, survived World War I's expansion and the post-war crisis, survived the Great Depression and bankruptcy in 1931 because John Olin understood what Winchester represented: quality, craftsmanship, American manufacturing excellence. Olin saved Winchester and ran it with pride for 30 years. Then, 1964 happened. Chemical executives who valued quarterly profits over century-long reputation made a decision to cut costs. They destroyed the quality that defined Winchester. Created the pre-64 versus post-64 divide that still exists today. The brand never recovered from that decision. Never. Sales declined. Reputation degraded. Customer loyalty evaporated. The damage was permanent. Here are the lessons written clearly so nobody can miss them. Short-term thinking kills empires. Winchester's post-World War I diversification into refrigerators and roller skates, trying to use surplus capacity instead of downsizing and focusing on core business, led directly to bankruptcy in 1931. The 1964 quality cuts, saving costs this quarter by destroying reputation built over 90 years, killed the brand permanently. Both decisions were made by people who understood business theory but didn't understand Winchester. Both catastrophic, both preventable. You cannot replace craftsmanship with cost-cutting, hand-fitted parts versus stamped metal, forged steel versus cast parts, hand-cut checkering versus press checkering. Customers notice, the market remembers. Winchester's reputation was built on quality. When they destroyed quality to save money, they destroyed the brand. Pre-64 Winchesters command premium prices today. Post-64 models don't. The market is delivering its verdict clearly. Quality matters, and destroying it has permanent consequences. Manufacturing jobs don't come back. When Winchester closed in 2006, 186 workers lost their jobs. Science Park created 2,000 jobs. Sounds like a win until you realize those 2,000 jobs require PhDs. The factory workers who lost their jobs can't do biotech research. Their kids might, if college is affordable. But the direct path from factory floor to middle-class prosperity, the path that existed when Winchester employed 19,000, that's gone, destroyed, not replaced. The neighborhoods haven't recovered. Newhallville and Dixwell haven't seen the prosperity from Science Park. The biotech workers live in luxury apartments and commute through the old Winchester neighborhoods. Different worlds, different economies. The families who built their lives around Winchester employment watch their property values stagnate while adjacent neighborhoods gentrified. They don't benefit from the Renaissance. They watch others benefit. Winchester didn't die because of unstoppable market forces. It died because of decisions. Bad decisions by people who borrowed too much for World War I expansion, then tried to diversify into products they didn't understand instead of paying down debt. Bad decisions by chemical executives in 1964 who thought they could cut quality without losing customers. Bad decisions by management who fought workers instead of adapting to global competition. Every major disaster in Winchester's history was caused by specific people making specific choices that prioritized something else over the company's long-term health. Those decisions have consequences. 140 years of Winchester production in New Haven ended March 31st, 2006. 186 workers laid off. Families who built their lives around that factory, 3 generations of workers, suddenly with nothing. Neighborhoods destroyed, communities fractured. Knowledge lost, legacy damaged. The factory is luxury apartments now, biotech labs, coffee shops serving $14 poke bowls. The workers are gone, scattered, retired, dead. The rifles are made overseas by foreign companies licensing the Winchester name from Olin. The neighborhood that Winchester built is being replaced by something else, something cleaner, something more modern, something more expensive. Something the people who used to live there can't afford. New Haven calls it progress. The people who lost their jobs might call it something else. The families priced out of their neighborhoods might call it something else. The workers who spent 40 years building rifles and have no transferable skills for the knowledge economy might call it something else. Winchester, the gun that won the West, the rifle that armed American soldiers in 2 world wars, the company that employed 19,000 people and created middle-class prosperity for thousands of families. Winchester exists now as a brand name licensed to foreign manufacturers. The guns are still made, just not here, not by these people, not with this history. That's what's lost. Not just jobs, not just a factory, not just an industry, an entire way of life. The knowledge of how to build quality firearms passed from generation to generation, the pride of craftsmanship, the dignity of making something valuable with your hands, the economic security of factory employment that lets working-class families buy homes and build wealth, the communities organized around shared work, the neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone because everyone worked together. All of that, gone, and it's not coming back.